Okay, so you guys today are going to be reading There Will Come Soft Rains. I just kind of want to give you guys a little bit of an introduction because it's a little bit of a difficult story. So, There Will Come Soft Rains is written by Ray Bradbury. If you've never heard of Ray Bradbury, he wrote Fahrenheit 451, which is a dystopian novel, and it's set in the future in America where books are completely banned and illegal, and they have firemen still, but firemen don't actually go around and put out fires in houses and buildings. They go around and burn books to keep them out of the hands of citizens. It's a really fascinating book if you want to read it. Library has copies, and I have copies as well. So if you like Ray Bradbury, based on what we read of him in class, you should consider reading Fahrenheit 451. Bradbury specialized in science fiction and horror as far as genres go. And then he was really known for his science fiction and being pretty adept at predicting where society was going to go as far as technology was concerned. So actually, whenever he died in 2012, the New York Times called him the writer most responsible for bringing modern science fiction into the literary mainstream. So very important science fiction writer. So the story that we're going to read is kind of different because it's published in 1950, but it's set in 2026, which, as we all know, hasn't even happened yet. That's still 8 years in the future from us. So for him to be writing this in 1950, set in 2026, some things are probably going to be, pretty similar to what we see today, but some things are probably going to be very different because he was probably imagining us being quite a bit more advanced than we actually are. But really, some of it will seem pretty striking. It's set in August 2026 in Allendale, California. The genre is science fiction and dystopian. Remember, dystopia just means a world where something is wrong. So if you've read The Hunger Games is a dystopia. If you have read Divergent is set in a dystopia. And the point of a dystopia is to point out things that are wrong with our society by setting up this world where something is wrong within it. So keep that in mind. So the themes that we see tackled in this story are technology, machinery, nature, war, and complete and total destruction. And then one thing that I want you guys to watch out for and be prepared for as you read this is that the characters in this story are not human. So this is the first story that we've read in our short story unit where we have characters who are not traditional human characters. So keep that in mind. Because of that, it can be kind of confusing for students. So the premise of it is that it revolves around this computer-controlled smart house that does pretty much everything that a family could need. It cooks for them, it cleans for them, it runs their bathwater, it warms their beds at night, it does everything that they could need. It wakes them up in the morning, tells them when to go to school and when to go to work, cooks them breakfast, cooks them dinner, lays out martinis for them to drink at night. Just does everything that they could think of. So the humans pretty much just don't have to do anything. But this house, whenever we open on it, is completely deserted. There is no one living there. There's no family there to take care of. And at the very beginning, that seems really odd because you're wondering why this family is gone. So they're mysteriously absent. The house is pretty much completely silent except for the sound of the machines. And we find out that the reason that the human race or that the family is gone is because the entire human race has actually been wiped out by, catastrophe and war. So it's pretty messed up as far as stories go. So let's talk about why this story is important and why it makes sense for the time period that it was written in. So we know that this is written in, probably the late 40s, if it was published in the 1950s. And during this first half of the 1900s, technology was advancing at a super, super fast pace. And this is causing a lot of people to become more and more dependent on technology. And Bradbury was an expert at noticing trends in our society and really wondering what would happen if they went a little out of control. So he, along with a lot of other people, wondered, what would actually happen if technology eventually got to the point where humans were almost no longer needed. We hear today that there's a very valid concern among the workforce that robots may someday take our jobs. I mean, we could even have robot teachers. That is a very real concern as we get further and further in our advancement of technology. So then you have to ask, okay, well, if we get to that point, are humans pretty much useless? Like if we can't do anything or if we don't have to do anything for ourselves because technology is so advanced, is this going to be a world like in WALL-E where we all just kind of sit around and get fat and drink shakes instead of eating food? Or is it going to be something where we find a new purpose among this advanced technology? And then he also wanted to ask the question, what would technology be able to continue if humans were wiped out? And so that question is really talked about and discussed in this story as well, because in this story, ultimately, you have to see, is the technology in the smart house going to survive now that it has no humans to protect it and maintain it and to serve it to serve them as well? So also talking about historical context, we mentioned that there has been some sort of catastrophic war event that has wiped out the entire human race in this. This would have been really, really realistic for the time because it played off of society's fears. So throughout the mid-1900s, people around the world were really, really terrified of nuclear warfare. And this would have been really shortly after America had released the atomic bombs in Japan over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That would have been in 1945. So this is only published 5 years after that. So it totally makes sense that people would be pretty concerned about nuclear war and the potential, for the entire human race to be wiped out if two countries, got into a skirmish and couldn't finish it off without violence. I hope this kind of gives you an introduction to it and kind of helps you understand the story, because it isn't an easy story. So you guys are going to be reading this in class today. You're going to read it independently. Then you're going to complete the practice test, and then you're going to turn that practice test into my substitute. Okay? And we will talk more about this story tomorrow. So yeah, thanks. I turned it off.